Welcome back to the Optimal Wellness Hour, your first step on the path to optimal wellness. And now, here's your hosts, Jen Smith and Bart Oates.
Well, welcome back to the Optimal Wellness Hour. Thanks for staying with us. We are now going to be joined by one amazing doctor who is going to really shed some light on how you can get out in front of, and that's really important, in front of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and other major medical issues that really are affecting a great deal of the population. Let me give you a little background first on her. Dr. Tara Dall, she graduated from the first class of diplomats of the American Board of Clinical Lipidology. Her clinic has been nationally recognized as the first fully certified level 2 lipid clinic in the U.S. In 2006, she opened the Cholesterol and Lifestyle Center. In 2008, she formed Early Detection Center for Heart Disease and Diabetes. She's got a special interest in advanced lipid testing, and we're going to be talking a lot about that today, and also CIMT technology. She's an expert in women's heart disease, polycystic ovarian syndrome, pediatric obesity. She's a published author. She is high in demand on the lecture circuit, from venues like hospitals to medical school grand rounds, large-scale community events. And she's truly an optimal doctor with some pretty amazing information. And Dr. Dall, we can't thank you enough for joining us here today on the Optimal Wellness Hour and also agreeing to be part of our show on a regular basis. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jen. I'm honored to be here.
You know, one of your areas of expertise is advanced lipid testing. And I don't think a lot of people really understand what that is all about. So give our listeners a brief rundown on advanced lipid testing and what it is.
Sure. So to understand advanced lipid testing, we need to understand what lipid testing is. And that's basically what most doctors order to try to understand what people's risk for heart disease might be. So cholesterol and triglycerides and the breakdown of cholesterol is what doctors normally order. So advanced lipid testing really takes it deeper, really looks under the hood to just say what types of markers truly define who's going to have a heart attack and or who may become diabetic. And the markers are really not found in those traditional cholesterol measurements. So we really take it a step further by looking at other blood markers, inflammation markers, the particles that carry the cholesterol, other genetic tests that really give us much better understanding of really who's at risk and who isn't.
So Dr. Dall, hi, this is Bart. And thanks very much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. So I'm a lay person. I played football, so don't hold that against me.
What position did you play? Moving right along.
I played football. So I'm a lay person. Tell me how the these advanced lipid tests are different from, say, regular cholesterol tests.
Sure. Well, first of all, we know that cholesterol is it's necessary. It's something that our body makes because we need it. We need it for cell membranes. We need it for hormones. We need it for our body functions. And so our body makes cholesterol in the liver, and sometimes it comes in through our stomach after we eat food. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter how much cholesterol is being made by the liver or really what's coming in through the body. What's really important is understanding the particles, the vehicles that actually carry the cholesterol around in the body. That's really what is associated with heart disease. And it doesn't matter if you've got particles that are carrying a ton of cholesterol and they're just completely engorged or whether they're half full. It really doesn't matter how much cholesterol you even have. What really matters is how many of those vehicles there are, because the more vehicles you have running around the bloodstream, the more likely they'll bang into the walls of the arteries and begin to form plaque that can lead to heart attacks and strokes.
So in New York City, we call that rush hour.
That's a very good analogy, actually. And when you think about it in the rush hour analogy, basically what matters is how many cars there are. It doesn't really matter how many people are in the cars. We still have a traffic jam and issues if you have a lot of cars out there. So what we measure are the cars. We don't care how many people are in there.
Most patients, if blood work is normal, they kind of ignore it, and doctor says you're in the normal range or the acceptable range. But normal's not always healthy and certainly not optimal. What can you add to that, Dr. Dall?
Right. So if you just look flat out at the statistics of the people who come into the hospital with heart attacks, with events. We've done research that's looked at this. There's a study published called Get With the Guidelines back in 2009, and they looked at 130,000 hospitalizations. And what they found was that 50% of those people who are showing up with heart attacks, with events, actually had completely normal cholesterol panels. And so we're understanding that obviously cholesterol does not tell us, the story. Does not tell us whether you're more likely to show up in the emergency room than your neighbor. And that's really concerning because that's what most doctors focus on. And it's just does a very poor job at really identifying who truly is at risk. And not only that, there are people who have high cholesterol, and everyone in their family has high cholesterol. And grandma and grandpa are in their 90s and nobody's had a heart attack. But you know what? Because they have high cholesterol, every doctor is telling them you have to take drugs, you have to take statins, because your cholesterol is high. But we know from the advanced testing that we do that actually there's people who have high cholesterol that actually are not at risk for heart disease and really don't need to take these medications. And it's so important that we understand who needs it and who doesn't, and make sure that we're really optimizing our health by understanding what it is that each one of us, personally needs. We really need to be able to individualize care versus just say everybody in the world with an LDL cholesterol over a certain amount needs to be on a drug, and everybody that doesn't have that amount is fine, because we know that's just not true.
Well, you mentioned a combination of advanced biomarker testing and genetic testing. So what are some of the things that people can find out through this sort of new way of testing to really look for disease process before it's already there?
So one of the things that we look for is whether you have too many of these particles that carry the cholesterol, and that's called an LDL particle concentration. That's also measured by something called an ApoB. And so those are two things you really need to know. Hear those names and know what they are so that you can ask your doctor for them. I think those are the most important tests to get first.
Doctor, what were those again?
So an ApoB is one test that's available, nationwide. Most hospitals will be able to do that. And the other one is NMR technology, which is called an LDL particle concentration. Both of those are measures of sort of all the bad particles that you have in your blood. And the more you have, the more likely you could have a heart attack at some point in your life. And sometimes we'll take it a step further and try to figure out, well, are you also more likely to have diabetes? And so we actually get this window into diabetes by looking at those different types of particles too. And so that is more important than anything. I honestly would be fine if we threw cholesterol out the door. And the funny thing about that is I'm a lipidologist, and a lipidologist means I'm an expert in cholesterol. That's really what defines me as a doctor. So, and my opinion is, I don't know that cholesterol really matters at all. And we probably are focusing on the wrong thing by measuring that.
It's interesting
It's
because patients have really been practicing a lot of people reactive medicine, and they're not told to make a change until after there's a disease identified, a disorder, some other condition, the cholesterols or the particles are not what they should be. And, would you say it's fair to say that by this kind of diagnostic blood testing and genetic testing that people might be able to get out in front of some of this and either slow it down or prevent some of these events that you're seeing in hospitals?
Absolutely, Jen. What is critical here is that heart disease is a preventable disease. There's no reason why this should be the number one cause of death. It is something that is absolutely preventable. But in order to prevent it, we need to understand who's at risk in the first place. I mean, if we screened every 20-year-old, I can tell you by looking at their profiles, I would be able to tell you who it is that we need to target certain types of diet and exercise and lifestyle modifications for to be able to prevent either a heart attack or diabetes, depending on what the profile is telling me. So what's amazing about this is it is preventable. It is reversible. There is so much we can do. The only reason I want to do advanced testing is that I know there's something we can actually do to fix it. It's not as though it needs to be something depressing that you get in your hand. Oh, I'm at risk. I got dealt bad genes from mom and dad. It's not the case. I mean, even if you have testing that suggests genetically that you are at very high risk for having a heart attack, that means we can now be empowered by that information and actually make changes to be able to prevent that from ever happening to you. And having done this for 15 years, I've done advanced testing in every patient I've seen for the last 15 years. And I know there are people alive today that would not be alive had we not been doing the advanced testing that we did and been able to identify what was going on.
So advanced testing, just from a layperson here, we're talking about just looking deeper into, instead of looking at just the cholesterol levels, and,
Right.
and we're looking deeper into it. And I think what you'd mentioned, we're looking for the vehicles, the number of vehicles.
Right.
And
The number of vehicles carrying cholesterol. We also look at things like inflammation because we know inflammation drives disease. So we have markers for that. We look sometimes for markers that will give us an early window into diabetes and help us understand who's on that path. I think, as Jen, as you were saying earlier, we tend to react in medicine. We sort of wait until you have a heart attack, or we wait until your blood sugar is abnormal. And then we say, oh, okay, we know how to fix that. We're going to deal with that. Well, unfortunately, 30% of people who have heart attacks die never knowing they had the disease because they died of that first event. How in the world is that the way we should be practicing medicine? I mean, we should be getting people 10 to 15 to 20 years before the disease is ever there in order to be able to prevent the disease from happening. And that's powerful. If we can do that, we can do that for diabetes. We've cured the two biggest problems we have in our society today.
So advanced testing is looking deeper as well as looking at it earlier.
Absolutely.
And not waiting.
It's it's like a predictor. It's almost like a glimpse into the future. And I want to take a minute here. You guys are listening to us talk about this advanced blood testing and genetic testing that can provide a window into your medical future. Well, you can take a step and stop disease process before it happens. If you're interested in some of these blood panels that you hear us talking about, they're available through the Optimal Wellness Network. So give a call to the Optimal Wellness Network now. The number is 800-400-8875. That's 800-400-8875. 8875. Make an appointment for yourself to get some of this cutting edge blood work. Give a call, mention WABC, and we're going to be able to provide you with also a complimentary consult along with your specialized blood panels to provide you with some great information. That's 800-400-8875. We're going to be right back with more Optimal Wellness.
Welcome back to the Optimal Wellness Hour, your first step on the path to optimal wellness. And now, here's your hosts, Jen Smith and Bart Oates.
Welcome back. We are talking with Optimal Wellness Doctor, Dr. Tara Dall, who is an expert in advanced blood testing and advanced lipidology. And I'm telling you, this could be some real life-saving stuff. Unfortunately, a revolutionary concept. And we're talking about blood work and genetic testing that can be a predictor of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and other illnesses long before they spiral out of control and you get really, really sick. So thank you for taking your time to join us today, Dr. Dall.
Dr. Dall, I've been told many illnesses like diabetes, coronary heart disease, high blood pressure, things that are coined as a metabolic syndrome, can be avoided if people take control of their health and understand everyday choices affect what their health outcome is. What are some of the everyday choices people should be mindful of when wanting to be healthy or take a very preventative approach to their wellness and health?
Sure. I think it's really important to really get back to the basics and really think about eating foods that are as close to their natural source as possible. I think we tend to, by convenience, shop the middle of the grocery store, which has an awful lot of boxes, awful lot of processed foods, and we would do so much better if we really stuck to the products that are really in the form that they came out of the ground in. So the vegetables and the sort of the periphery of the grocery store. I always like to tell people to do everything they can to eat the rainbow over the course of the week. Eating foods that are really naturally brilliant and beautiful in color, because those are usually very rich with antioxidants. And I think, also it's so critical that we really try to avoid things that are really triggering a lot of the diseases you mentioned. When you talk about metabolic syndrome and high blood pressure and heart disease, so much of that is being triggered by sugar, excess sugar intake, which is in so much of what we consume. Sugar, salt, those kinds of things we just need to really be very mindful of. And in addition, I think we tend to be pretty sedentary in our society. And I think recognizing the importance of being active and recognizing not all of us are able to go to a gym for 90 minutes a day to be healthy. But you know what? We can slap on a pedometer. And I tell you, while I'm making dinner at home with my kids, I can walk in place. That counts. I don't have to actually get anywhere. I just have to move. So
the ultimate multitasker.
Yes. I mean, there's various ways we can keep ourselves moving. I love working with families. I see children in my practice as well. And sometimes we'll will give a whole family pedometers, and we'll have them, start to do contests with each other to try to see who gets the most step counts in the course of a week, and then someone gets a prize. But I always say the caveat to that is it's not just who gets the most, but everyone has to reach a minimum. So that makes, little Johnny make mom get off the couch and get some steps so that he can win the prize at the end of the week. So we can find all sorts of creative ways to move.
A bit of a family challenge. I have a question too, actually, but going back to the comment you made about diet, I don't know. I think, I know I did, the general population underestimates the impact that the elimination of sugar from your diet can have. I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, and you hear about it all the time, but for those of us that have given it a go, the effects are pretty amazing. Can you address that?
Absolutely. I think that's the single most important thing we could do if we're going to make a change in our diet is to get rid of sugar. I tell people, look for the term high fructose corn syrup and don't buy anything that has it in there. Sugar has unfortunately been added to our food in the last 20 years or so. And unfortunately, that's because we got on this bandwagon that fat somehow drives disease. And we began to come up with all of these products that are fat-free and low fat. But you know what? If you don't have fat, you got to have something to have the food taste good. And what's happened is we've added sugar. I would much rather somebody eat yogurt that has fat in it, the 2% or higher even than that, versus yogurt that's fat-free, for example, because that just means there's more sugar. And that's really what's been added as the fat's been removed. So I think that we've just really got to change the way we're even looking at the foods that we're buying. Fat-free is actually not the way to go. I mean, you're better off getting foods with healthy fats and eliminating the extra sugar that's in there. So that I think that's a critical component. I mean, if all of the listeners can just begin to look at what you're eating and look at how many grams of sugar are in the products you consume.
And it's not just about weight control. It's about this whole metabolic syndrome that Bart brought up and the kinds of things that you're seeing in your practice. This is a good segue into talking a little bit about prediabetes and how important diet and exercise is, and what some of the advanced blood tests are that are available that can identify somebody's course to becoming a diabetic before it happens.
Right. This is one of my biggest passions in life, is to be able to identify who is on a path toward diabetes and stop it now. Because once your blood sugar tips to this range that a doctor will call diabetes or even prediabetes, there's a sort of a glucose level, it hits over 100. Now that's technically in a pre-diabetic range. There's nothing magical about that number. By the time you hit that number, you already have significant amount of damage to your pancreas. You have damage to your blood vessels. You may have organs that have been infected by it. And if we can get at that 10 to 15 years before you ever see any kind of blip in a blood sugar, think about what we can do. I mean, that's when prevention can really happen. I mean, if you just even look at a person's body, in a child's body, for example, their blood sugars are going to be perfect, but they may have sort of this darkish discoloration in their skin, around the back of their neck or under their arms. We see this commonly, and this is actually a marker of elevated insulin, and it's actually a marker of what we call insulin resistance, which is a precursor to diabetes. And so when we see that type of change in a person's body, even in their skin, we couple that, especially with the advanced testing that we can do looking at the blood work, we can really definitively be able to say what is going on here and how can we change this and how can we move this person away from the path that they're on, which is really toward diabetes. And that can be done literally decades before someone will ever develop diabetes.
It's being proactive and not waiting until you hit that critical marker where you're out of the range of norm, but address it even before you even get there.
Right.
So that's
it's
exactly
powerful. I mean, to know this information. I check my kids. I mean, the guidelines say do lipid panels between 9 and 11. We're supposed to do a cholesterol panel in every single child. Well, why in the world not do a more advanced panel that gives you a much better window into what's really going on? I mean, I don't want to put a kid on a cholesterol med because their cholesterol test came back positive. I want to know what's driving that disease. And if it's high, what in the world's going on and how are we going to change that path?
Well, I think the meaning of prevention has sort of taken on a whole new thing with the way technology and a lot of the advanced blood testing and genetic testing that you're doing and that is being done through the Optimal Wellness Network can provide. I mean, you're really talking about a glimpse into the future and being able to form intervention now before it gets 10 times worse and you having to spend a life on medication.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely critical that we get at this as early as possible. And again, the first steps are really making those lifestyle changes. And I think recognizing the importance of movement and recognizing the importance of getting rid of sugar, probably adding some fiber along the way. Those are some very simple things that if we begin to start paying attention to it will make a huge difference.
I just want to remind our listeners that if you're interested in this blood work that you're hearing Dr. Dall talk about, these advanced panels that can really provide you a window into your medical future, these tests are now available, and they're available through the Optimal Wellness Network. So jot the number down, place the call now, 800-400-8875. That's 800-400-8875. Make an appointment to get this blood work today. We're also going to be able to provide you with a complimentary consultation so you can really begin to understand what these numbers mean, and it's really an amazing education.
Does insurance cover this?
Fortunately, a lot of insurance providers do cover this blood work, and that's the great news. And I don't think a lot of people know that this kind of thing is available because it's just not being done that much in many, general practitioners and cardiologists' offices around the country. So the number one more time to call is 800-400-8875, and the Optimal Wellness Network can get you set up with some of this blood work. And you can also visit optimalwellness.com to learn more about this. Dr. Dall, we've got a few more minutes here. What would you say are the top 3 common concerns you hear from patients?
Sure, I'll tell you what I see most often in my practice and probably what I hear just in interacting with people through my travels. Probably one of the biggest things is how in the world do I get rid of this weight I've got around my middle? I mean, even people who are fit are like really struggling with that abdominal weight they can't get rid of. And that really has a lot to do with this insulin resistance that we're talking about. Advanced testing will be able to tell us why that's happening, give you a solution so you don't have to be so frustrated, and really begin to change things so that people can feel better. That's probably one of the things I hear most often. The second would be questions about medications, about supplements, about vitamins. Doc, I don't know what to take, what not to take. I hear something on the news saying I shouldn't do this, and then the next day I should, and I'm scared to take medications, and are statins good or bad for me? I mean, those are the kinds of things I get asked, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think there's a lot of answers that we can provide to really help people sort through, all this information that they're hearing and really come to some good decisions about how to really optimize their health. And then the third thing I probably hear most often would be issues related to stress. And I don't think any one of us can claim we have no stress. I mean, even if we are the happiest people in the world, we have stress related to that as well. And so addressing that and realizing the impact that has on our body is really important to recognize and point out and talk about.
Well, Dr. Dall, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Bart and I are excited that you're going to be a regular contributor to the show and joining us here on a almost weekly basis. And, we'd like to invite everyone to learn more about Dr. Dall and more about how to optimize your health at Optimal Wellness. And we really do look forward to you joining us from week to week and sharing some really important, potentially life-saving information.